Hello, good morning, and welcome to all of you for our latest MEED webinar this month, looking at the ever popular Giga Projects market in Saudi Arabia. I think one of the most popular and most talked about topics these days in the projects market in the GCC and wider MENA region. My name is Edward James. I'm the head of content and research at MEED, and I'll be giving a presentation today on the latest updates on the Giga Projects market. We have a look at some of the recent developments and an outlook for 2026 and beyond. Thank you very much for joining us live today. Just to let you know that, as usual, we'll be sharing this presentation in due course. As long as you registered for this with your email address, you should be receiving a copy of this in due course. And also, it's being recorded, so it will be uploaded online to YouTube over the next few days once it's been edited, and you'll be able to look at it again or share it with your colleagues. So don't feel you need to memorize or note down all the data today, because you will have a chance later on, either in the presentation itself or online, to watch it again. Now, I will do a presentation for about 30-40 minutes, and then after that, we'll take a Q&A session. So if you do have any questions, then please, as ever, put them into the menu, the Q&A box on your Zoom menu, and I'll do my best to answer those questions at the end if I have time, and if there are not too, and if I can, and not too many. Right, let's kick off. Before we begin, as you probably all know, when we do these webinars, they are tied to a MEED Premium Intelligence Report. The latest one is on the Giga Projects. It's the Q4 2025 Saudi Giga Projects Report. It's priced at $4,250, but for those of you attending today, there is a special discount. So you can see the code up there, webinar 600, and you'll get a $600 discount as long as you purchase the report before 9th of December. This report is more than 800 pages long in PowerPoint format. It's a lot like what I'm presenting today, but with a lot more detailed data, project granularity, scopes, contact details, and so on. So definitely well worth checking out. If you want to learn more about that, simply scan the QR code here, and you'll be led to a page where you can see some sample pages and learn a little bit more about that. So please check that out. Also, something also very exciting and probably of interest to many of you here today is our Saudi Giga Projects 2026 Summit and Conference next year in June in Riyadh. It's our third edition of the Giga Projects event. It's extremely popular. We have most of the Giga Project clients in attendance and or speaking, giving presentations on procurement opportunities or scope breakdowns of their projects, as well as various panel discussions and workshops where you will get a chance also to network and meet with some of the key decision makers and stakeholders in the Giga Projects community. So if you're interested and want to know more about the Giga Projects event, you can scan this QR code here. As I said, it's in June in Riyadh, and you can register your interest, whether that's to attend or to speak or to sponsor. So I was there. I've been there the last couple of years chairing it. It is a fantastic event. The access to the key stakeholders is unparalleled. So if you are either already in the market and want to know more, or looking to enter the market, it is an essential place to be and event to attend. Right, let's move on to the presentation itself and look at where we are currently in the market. Right, just as a reminder for all of you, just in case you are unfamiliar, I'm sure most of you are pretty well aware of what the Giga Projects are. We have what we define as the Giga Projects here. We have 5 official Giga Projects: Neom, Red Sea, Diriyah, Qiddiya, and Roshan. I apologize, I see the Roshan logo is back to the front, but these are the 5 official Giga Project companies, all subsidiaries of the PIF. And then we have various other subsidiaries under the PIF as well, which are not officially classified as Giga Projects, but to all intents and purposes are major mega projects in their own right, some even bigger than some of the official Giga Projects. We also have Giga Projects, or we classify as Giga Projects at MEED, several projects being developed by non-PIF entities such as Sports Boulevard, King Salman Park, and Green Riyadh in Riyadh, the Royal Commission for Al Lula, and so on. And just to also summarize, we have this fairly well-known map of the various different Giga projects. We have a brief description of them and some of the values. You can get an idea here of what they are. And as you can see, the value of work on Giga Projects program has been creeping up. It's now at about $116 billion. We estimate total value to be about 925 billion, but frankly, the scale of the program is so large it could be quite a bit larger than that, especially given the fact that many of the Giga projects have not yet been announced, or for which there are details which are not very clear at this stage. Right, now, how have the Giga projects market performed in recent years, particularly in this year? So we can see that the Giga projects grew in terms of contract awards, grew each year, reaching a peak in 2023 of nearly $35 billion worth of work awarded. Then, as we also probably all well know, in around the end of the first quarter, second quarter last year, spending started to decline. There was a pause in spending as the government and the PIF recalibrated or reprioritized the capex on the Giga Projects program. So as a result, we saw a decline about 15% to just under $30 billion last year. But this decline is accelerated this year and is even more apparent. As of a couple of weeks ago, we've only got $8.5 billion worth of Giga projects awarded this year, just to show how fast or how much the Giga projects program has slowed in terms of contract awards this year. So I think that really underlines and reflects this sort of pause or reprioritization of the Giga projects program. Same data in the graph below. This is just the breakdown of the Giga Projects program by sector in terms of contracts awarded to date. And as you might expect, most of it is in the construction or transport infrastructure space, such as roads, utility, sewage and water networks, and of course, buildings, so on. Right. So we've seen a big fall this year and slightly lower fall last year. I want to get your views. So using the poll function in front of you, how confident are you that the Giga project spending will return to 2023 levels or higher? Not at all confident, quite confident, or very confident? Let's get your opinions. Got a very large audience today. More than 700, probably about 750 live attendees. So we've got a very good sample size. 450 responses so far, fantastic. So this is statistically relevant, and 58% of you are saying not at all confident that Giga project spending will ever return to 2023 levels. So that's a clear majority of you think that we're in this new paradigm of slightly lower spending than we've seen. Add in another 8% who say, sorry, so that's 58% of you are not confident that the market is going to get back to 2023 levels. However, a third of you are quite confident that the market will return, and another 7% are very confident. So we have a 58-41% split between those who are confident, those who are not optimistic, and those who are. Very interesting. So fairly evenly split in that regards. Right, so as we saw, $8 billion worth of Giga Projects contracts awarded year to date as per our MEED projects construction database. And here you can see that those contracts which constitute that $8.5 billion. All of the data is built from the bottom up using hundreds, if not thousands, of individual contracts. Here you get to see a few of them, and as we can see, really a lot of concentration in terms of project activity this year on the Riyadh-based Giga projects, particularly Diriyah, but also Qiddiya and Roshan Sports Boulevard. So you can see very much of a spending concentration in and around Riyadh area. Now, a couple of notable absences on this list, for example, of course, NEOM, which we'll talk about in a bit. There hasn't been a lot of work awarded on Red Sea Global Giga project recently, and mainly because they're completing the first phase before launching the second. And also some other big absences, Jeddah Central, for example, Medina. There are a handful of Giga projects where work really has slowed to a crawl in terms of major project procurement. Now, just in terms of setting greater context, the Giga projects market is, in terms of the clients we've just been looking at, only comprises about 20% of the entire Saudi projects ecosystem in terms of the awards over the last 5 to 6, 7 years. As you can see on the left-hand side, 80% of all awards over the last half decade have been outside of the Giga Projects program. So I think it's worth bearing in mind that Giga Projects constitute only a minority, or small minority at that, of overall spending in Saudi Arabia. And then of that 20% of Giga project spending, then the 5 official Giga projects account for 77% of all Giga project contracts awarded. Other PIF subsidiaries about 9%, and the other 14% for projects, for example, by the Royal Commission in Riyadh, Al Ula, Sports Boulevard, and King Salman Park, about 14% of overall total Giga project spending. And there you are on the right-hand side, you have that 14% broken down to see where they have been spent. All right, second poll question, the one everyone is talking about, the line at NEOM. Let's get your views. What is the likelihood of the line proceeding in its current form? We know there's been a lot of discussion about this, big pauses in spending there. What's your opinion on the line? I wanted to ask this question before I gave my opinion. So just while you're all answering that, just a reminder that this is being recorded. So you'll have the opportunity to watch it again online on YouTube. And also, if you have registered for this webinar with your email address, you should receive a copy of this presentation in due course as well. Right, so quite clear here again, 500 plus responses. 35% of you say there's no chance that the line at NEOM will proceed in its current form. 45% of you say there's very little chance. So a very large majority of you, 80%, are very pessimistic about the line continuing. 17% of you say there's a fair chance, and only 3% of you say there's a very good chance. Maybe that 3% of you are in the know, and maybe you all know something that we don't. But it's clear that the majority, vast majority, believe that the line is not able or will not continue in its current form. Okay. Now, as ever, I just want to remind everyone about the Middle East and Africa and APAC Global Data MEED Industrials channel. If you are interested in receiving the latest updates on the projects market in the Middle East, Africa and Asia region, then please scan this QR code and join the channel. You will receive unobtrusively every day the latest roundup on the channel, well, 1 or 2 selected important developments for you to read, to stay up to date on the latest developments in the market. Very useful. I'm part of the channel. It's great to see some of the interesting things develop. There's some exclusive content for MEED on there, as well as Global Data, our parent company. So whatever your interest in the projects market, it's well worth joining. Right, what's happened on the Giga projects recently? number of developments over the last quarter since I last did a webinar on the Giga Projects program. Perhaps the most significant is the launch of a new Giga Projects Giga project, which you can see here, King Salman Gate. There's a visual of it. It's well, you can see for yourself, a massive development around the Holy Mosque in Mecca al-Mukarrama, and the client is a PRF subsidiary, Ruh al-Haram al-Makki. And you can see that it features several dozen high-rise, mid-rise towers circling the Holy Mosque, and opposite to the Abraj al-Bait, which you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, which includes the second tallest tower in the region, one of the tallest in the world, the clock tower there. So this project, as you can see from the render, it's not clear to me, but it's likely that the final designs haven't been completed. I don't know if every tower will end up looking like that, or whether these are placeholders for the final design. But you can see it's going to be a very substantial project running into the billions of dollars. In addition, it features around the outside of the Holy Mosque additional prayer balcony with 150,000 new prayer spaces. Within the buildings themselves, there will be building plazas with a further 613,000 prayer spaces, looking at the Kaaba directly. And then there's a skywalk and mezzanine levels of 72,000 additional prayer spaces. So this is going to be obviously a long-term project to be built over several years, and is going to feature mixed-use hotel and residential developments. And I imagine, given its location, be some of the most expensive real estate in the world. The difference from the Abraj Al Bait project is that from January, Saudi Arabia will allow non-residents or non-nationals or non-GCC nationals to purchase property in Saudi Arabia. So if the regulations also cover Mecca, then clearly there will be a very strong demand for this. And indeed, this is something I'm going to touch on later, which is how the Giga Projects program is shifting from direct government financed infrastructure and construction to that where real estate investment plays a bigger role. So that's the latest development. You may have seen in Cityscape this week in Riyadh some of the models there. Very, very impressive project, very exciting project, and will make Mecca a hub for project development going forward. Another key development which we have reported on or talked about at MEED is a new national athletic stadium at the Qiddiya Giga project in southwest Riyadh, towards the southwest of Riyadh. This is an estimated nearly $2 billion project, which is a multi-purpose stadium, 182,000 square meters, and benchmarked against London Olympic Stadium. You can see the key stakeholders in terms of the architects and consultants. And it's a quick, fast-track project expected to be completed by 2030. So expressions of interest have been submitted, and expected to be strong competition for that. Of course, there's a football stadium for the World Cup also in Qiddiya as well. So it really is the age of stadium construction right now in Saudi Arabia, both for this and for, of course, the Asian Football Championships in 2027 and the FIFA World Cup in 2034, of course. And who knows, maybe even the Olympics in due course. Next up, we have Q Express, another Qiddiya related project. This is a high-speed railway line from King Salman International Airport running through the North Pole, Giga project in North Riyadh, with a station at the King Abdullah Financial District, and then straight on to Qiddiya with the aim of providing quick transport for tourists and visitors arriving into Saudi Arabia straight to the Qiddiya Leisure and Entertainment City Hub, one of the world's largest single-site entertainment districts. Indeed, one of the core components of Qiddiya is the Six Flags water park, which is due to open very soon. So this is a multi-billion-dollar project, high-speed railway line in and under and above Riyadh, and clearly something that is of interest to many contractors, system suppliers, rolling stock suppliers. Expressions of interest have been submitted. 145 international and local firms have submitted their expressions of interest to Qiddiya, which is working alongside the Royal Commission for Riyadh and the National Centre for Prioritisation and PPP projects. Now, why is the latter involved in this? Because it is going to be a PPP project, the first rail PPP project in the MENA region. So it's going to be interesting to see whether this works with private sector finance, construction, development and operations expertise coming in, but it does mean that there is less dependence on government spending to get this project delivered. So a very interesting project, and again, linked to the Giga Project. So that's now out in the market. Very interesting. Now, another development is on the Mukaab, which is the centerpiece of the new Murabba Giga Project development in North Riyadh. New Murabba Development Company is, of course, another PIF subsidiary. This is the world's largest downtown development, about 19 square kilometers. Just to put that into context, the Dubai downtown development is 3 square kilometers, so you're looking at something 6 times larger. And this centerpiece is the Mukaab, which is a 400 by 400 by 400 meter cube-like structure within which there will be another tower. Now, this is a very technologically advanced project, as you can imagine, very ambitious. It's the world's heaviest building, and it's going to cost several $1 billion, of course, as you might imagine, to develop. Now, interestingly, there is also a 43,000 seat stadium for the World Cup as part of the development. But more interestingly is the fact that although the piling work has been done, there has been a delay on, I think it's fair to say, on proceeding with the project in its current, in terms of the construction of the Mukaab itself. And there has been a slight shift in my view, of the project moving a little bit more towards a real estate play, which I'll talk about in a bit, because that's not unique to this project alone. Right, another priority project for Saudi Arabia is, of course, the Riyadh World Expo 2030 near King Salman International Airport, King Khalid International Airport in the northwest of Riyadh. This mega project, Giga project, needs to be opened by October 2030. It will be open for 6 months and will attract millions of both Saudis, residents, and international tourists to come in and visit. There will be a new metro station developed on the western side of it. And as you can see, the master plan calls for 5 different districts. Now, I'm glad to say that the very first major contract to do the early works contract was recently awarded by Expo 2030 Riyadh Company, ERC, which is a PIF subsidiary. And that was awarded to local contractor Binya. And meanwhile, commercial offers were signed. Commercial offers were submitted this week for 3 major civil works packages covering the main utilities corridor, the northern cluster, the nature corridor, and the southern cluster of the nature corridor. So work is beginning to start on this project, and just as well, because as we know from our experience on the Dubai Expo, these Expo projects are immensely complex and complicated. Not only do you have a very set deadline and looming deadline, but also you have to interface with more than 150 countries around the world which want to develop their own pavilions. So it's an immensely complicated, complex project, and work really needs to accelerate now in order for this to be completed on time. Right, as I mentioned earlier with New Murabba, there has been, in the recent weeks, a very clear shift, in my opinion, towards some of these giga projects becoming more of a real estate play. So there have been various announcements, which I'll go over in the next couple of slides, which I believe underlines or supports that opinion. Now, why is there been this shift towards real estate? Well, of course, we saw last year that the budgets are being stretched with lower oil prices, and it's clear that the PIF and the government wish to finance or fund the Giga projects in a slightly different way. And alongside PPP, one of the best ways to be able to proceed with projects is to receive external financing through the form of real estate investments. And here we have Jeddah Central, which in terms of activity for procurement of major contracts has been a bit quieter this year. They recently signed a number of contracts with hotel developers, with local real estate firms to develop resorts, hotels, within the Jeddah Central master plan. As you can see here, I won't go through all of them, but some very significant luxurious hotels, and these will be a core component of the master plan, for which Jeddah Central Company, PIF subsidiary, has built the infrastructure for. So in addition to those anchor assets such as the aquarium and oceanarium, and the stadium, and so on, there will now begin to be private sector real estate development within the master plan. Another major real estate development is, of course, Murabba and Mukaab, and the King Salman Gate project I announced or talked about earlier. They signed a number of agreements recently with real estate funds to invest in the project. I don't think Royal Haramaki will have much problem attracting real estate investment or hotel investment into the project due to the very, very high demand for property in and around the Holy Mosque. So again, that is going to be used as a means of helping finance and develop the Giga project. Again, just a reminder for the 850 plus live viewers today, this presentation is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube in due course. And if you've registered, you will receive a copy of this presentation too, to look at in your own time or to share with colleagues. I'm also, as ever, going to take some questions that you may have. If you do have any questions, please submit them into the Q&A box on your Zoom bar and menu bar, and I will attempt to answer them once I've finished this webinar, if I can. Again, some other developments around real estate. You can see here Al Balad Development Company, which is also based in Jeddah and tasked with developing older parts of Jeddah, the culturally significant Jeddah Historic District, otherwise known as Al Balad. So this has signed a number of real estate developments recently, and that will also help develop some of the projects and reduce the strain on the budget of the PIF and the government. And going back to New Murabba, as I said, a bit of a shift towards real estate there. We can see they recently announced an agreement for the design of the residential community, first residential community at New Murabba. Now, why am I talking about this real estate? Well, as I said, government finances are more strained, lower oil prices, the costs of these Giga projects have increased, and there's a greater emphasis now on the individual Giga projects to finance or self-finance in one way or another their capex. And one of the best ways of doing that is by attracting investment into real estate, also off-plan sales, and to use that revenue and investment to help finance the more anchor assets or infrastructure assets of their project. And in my view, in my opinion, this is what we've been seeing recently in the last month or two. So alongside the anchor and iconic infrastructure, such as the Mukaab itself, or other elements of these Giga projects, we're also starting to see these investment sales as well. And of course, the money that these bring in will help finance the projects. Now, of course, another way of financing these projects, apart from attracting real estate investment, is to try and develop them on a PPP basis as much as possible. Now, the PPP procurement mechanism has grown quite considerably over the last 2 years as a means of developing projects in the kingdom. In 2024, nearly 20% of the entire value of all projects awarded in the kingdom were in the form of PPPs. A lot of that, of course, in power and water. But in recent years, we've seen that diversify for the first time into education and healthcare projects. We've got tenders out in the market for development of PPPs in railway, as we just saw, the Qatar with the Q Express, also in the roads, the Sir Jizan Highway, and in airports, such as the TAFE and ABHA PPP projects. So as government finances get more constrained, then there is a greater impetus or incentive to try and develop projects on a PPP basis. And then when you look at the Giga projects themselves, then there are various components of them where the PPP delivery mechanism is viable, particularly in areas such as labour accommodation, in wastewater treatment, in power and water provision, in waste collection services, in mobility solutions. And rather than the overall Giga project client having to finance those projects, it can get the private sector instead to develop them. So again, reducing that CapEx strain. So I would expect to see the PPP development mechanism grow in popularity and increase, continually increase in the kingdom, not just in the traditional power and water market, but also in other sectors for the first time as well. So again, you can see this trend towards getting the private sector more involved in the development of these Giga projects, rather than dependent on the Giga project clients or the PIF or the government themselves. And of course, hand in hand with that are the Giga projects attempting to do corporate bonds, corporate borrowing, and also attracting foreign investment as well to develop them. And of course, as well, I'll also expect to see many of them IPO as well as a means of generating funds in due course. Right, third poll question. Over the past 12 months, I guess as a result of some of this slowdown, has your company increased its focus and resources in Saudi Arabia and its Giga projects, maintained its focus and resources on Saudi Arabia and its Giga projects, or decreased its focus and resources on Saudi Arabia and its Giga projects? Let's see what has happened in the market itself. Just give you all a bit of time to answer. So we've got 400 responses. Now, much more, I guess it's more even this one. Half of you, 50%, say you are maintaining your focus and resources on Saudi Arabia and its Giga projects, which is good to hear. 33% of you said that in the last 12 months, you've increased your focus and resources on Saudi Arabia and its Giga projects. And 17% of you say that you've decreased your focus and resources on the kingdom and its Giga projects. I think this is very interesting because it tends to contradict what the previous two poll results seem to say. So while the levels of work and confidence levels have decreased, actually, in terms of company activity, 83% of you are either maintaining or actually increasing your focus in the kingdom. Interesting. Thank you very much for that. Right, so what's the long-term outlook? Well, first of all, let's take a look at the long-term future pipeline for the Giga Projects program. And we can see here that the value of known plan and awarded GCC projects sits at about $1.65 billion for Saudi Arabia, and that's that's larger than almost all the other 6 GCC states combined. We've got about $3.1 trillion of known future projects in the GCC, and you can see that UAE is in second place, about $875 billion, then Oman, Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain. And we've got, you can see the breakdown there, construction, $1.7 trillion, in keeping with the historical trend, transport, $384 billion, power, $309 billion, and so on. In terms of the long-term future pipeline, just looking at the Giga projects, well, we can see here that in terms of sector breakdown, we've got $629 billion in the construction space, as you would expect for the Giga projects. We've got about $91 billion in the transport infrastructure space, $72 billion in power, and $10 billion in water provision, water projects. And then if I go delve more deeply into the Giga Projects program subsectors, then we can see the vast majority of the future pipeline is in the mixed use space. Basically, that's because we didn't have the visibility of individual packages and how they're broken down. So a lot of those are in mixed use. But you can see here power generation, infrastructure, leisure, residential, all of them around $50 billion. Now, looking at the sort of shorter term pipeline, we can see there's more than $50 billion of individual project contract packages on the Giga Projects program out in the market, out to tender or under bid evaluation. That's a very healthy number, indicating the sort of short term prospects for the Giga Projects. However, it's also worth noting that a lot of these have been in the market for a long time, and there's a big delay in awarding them while the budgets get approved. We then have another $47 billion of Giga Projects in the PQ stage and nearly $90 billion in design. What's in tender right now? Tender and PQ stage. Here's just an indication of some of those big Giga Projects. We've got Q Express, as we talked about earlier. We've got the iconic terminal, King Salman International Airport. We've got various renewable energy projects to serve NEOM, for example, and by both Enova and NEOM. Enova and NEOM itself. Got some QIC contracts. Got new Murabba as well. So got a healthy pipeline of contracts there. Not all of them, of course, will be awarded. Some of them might get delayed, cancelled, or rescoped. But nonetheless, you can see you get an idea of some of those projects. Now, I think it's important when we look at the future that we should also bear in mind that there are a number of potential future Giga projects which haven't yet been announced. Now, we look at the PIS financial statement, the latest one for 2024, and we can see that it has listed as private 100% owned subsidiaries under it a number of real estate companies or project companies which have never been, which have not had their Giga projects announced. So here I've highlighted them: Al Dissa, Al Ukair, Central Riyadh, Commercial Strip, Desert Resorts, Destinations Development, Diplomatic Quarter, Gulf Coast Real Estate Development Company, Hunting Reserves Development Company, and so on. Now, some of their projects are known, some of them are not, but none of them are official. The point I'm making here is that what we've seen so far to date in terms of Giga projects is probably not the full spectrum or full future pipeline. So a lot of these projects are in design. Some of them have already started tendering. Some of them are more advanced than others, but all of them are in that pipeline and provide more work to come. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them, but several of them are, we do have details of, which are going to either come to market or already in the market. Perhaps one of the biggest ones is Central Riyadh Development Company, which is one of the world's largest regeneration projects in the center of Riyadh, covering 15 square kilometers, part of the long-term vision for Riyadh. We have Gulf Coast Real Estate Development Company, GCDC, which has its project line, codename Project Line, which is a project in the divided zone, residential, agriculture, and commercial. A lot of it is focusing on the Kuwait market, residential market, but a very interesting project also underway there. Destinations Development Company, otherwise known as Project W, which has what we call the Monolith Hotel, close to Al Ula. We have Hunting Reserves Development Company, otherwise known as Project Ghazal, which is 3 protected natural reserves. Jabal al-Shafair Development, 3 villages to be developed in the Taif region. We have Tower District Real Estate Development Company, which is also codenamed Project Rise, in the north of Riyadh. And we have Desert Resorts Development Company, which is called Project Dunes, which is quite advanced now, which is a new ultra-luxury resort near Sheba in the Empty Quarter, near the UAE border. And there are others as well, which we've seen in the previous slide. So plenty of potential work to come. And just as we've seen with King Salman Gate, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of these announced over the next 12 to 24 months. Another very big important one is, I think I should mention, is the Riyadh Lake Real Estate Development Company, which I believe is going to be the project company client for Project Paradise, which I've talked about before, which is a massive new mixed-use development in the southwest of Riyadh around Wadi Laban. So what next for the Giga Projects program? So this is all my personal opinion. Now, I expect there to be little short-term movement in terms of a rapid increase in spending on the Giga Projects program. PIF has been evaluating its priorities and what it wants to do next. And what I'm hearing is that in January or from early next year, it will provide more clarity on its next 5-year program and priorities. I think it's already indicated that it's going to move its focus a little away from sort of project development, and a lot more into AI and other emerging new economy sectors. So let's watch this space and see what happens next. Now, my personal opinion is that the Line and Magna, the hotel development along the Gulf of Aqaba coast, is not going to move in any time soon. I think the $50 billion cost, at least, of each module, it just makes it too unfeasible commercially. I hope I'm wrong, of course, but it just doesn't seem feasible at this moment in time. Work has largely stopped on the project, the infrastructure, and I just don't think it's feasible at this moment in time, not without certainly some major rescoping. I think Oxagon, on the other hand, Oxagon and Sindala will continue. Sindala is being largely reworked, and if you look at satellite pictures, you can see that perhaps the end product of the original development wasn't quite up to scratch, and certainly there's a lot of redevelopment going on there to turn that around. It's likely that Sindala, control of Sindala and its new development is going to be transferred to Red Sea Global, which of course has had good experience and success with island developments in the Red Sea. And there are rumors about Oxagon also being transferred to a different client, but we'll wait and see. Right, as I mentioned earlier, my opinion is that there will be a renewed focus in and around Riyadh, particularly on the Qiddiya, Diriyah, Roshan Giga projects for various different reasons. Roshan is able to finance its projects through off-plan sales, so that means it can proceed without such a strain on government budgets. Qiddiya is nearing completion on its first phase and will soon start generating revenue as well, while Diriyah is a centerpiece of basically turning Riyadh into a dramatic transformation in time for both the Riyadh World Expo in 2030 and the World Cup in 2034. Of course, we've got the events, the Expo and the World Cup stadiums, which must proceed, so clearly they're a priority. But we're also seeing some major investments in King Salman Park, Sports Boulevard and King Salman International Airport recently, which are also, we believe, part of the priority for getting Riyadh ready in time for the major events. And then just as we're seeing in Dubai, it's a back-to-basics approach for transport infrastructure. A lot of investment by the Royal Commission in roads and bridges and in metro projects. Line 2 metro extension in Riyadh was recently awarded. There's Line 7 in the market, although whether that proceeds with Q Express or not, we'll wait and see. And of course, we've got the Q Express itself out in the market for tender. Finally, we've got the Riyadh Link under the Saudi Arabian Railways, another PIF owned company, although not operationally run by the PIF. That's tendered the Riyadh Link. There is also the Saudi Land Bridge coming, linking Jeddah with Riyadh and then on to Dammam. And just sticking with railway projects, we expect EOIs to come out this week for the doubling of track on the Northern Minerals Railway line for Ma'aden as it increases its fertilizer exports. Now, as I mentioned already, I think we're seeing a shift towards real estate investment. This is not unprecedented. We saw the same happen with a lot of free zones in Dubai, which turned into more of a real estate play as a means of funding the projects. So I've just talked about that, but I think that's going to be a trend that continues, as is the use of the PPP framework for developing projects, which again, I've talked about. We're now moving away from this sort of 2030 target deadline. A lot of these projects, there's been a reclarification or prioritization, and we're going to be seeing these projects move into 2030, into 2040 and beyond. And a lot will be made clearer next year, but also with the Saudi 2040 vision launch. We're already talking about NEOM being a 100-year project. So again, it's quite clear that this sort of 2030 deadline or date for these delivery of these projects is shifting. So, and finally, I think if those Giga projects are not yet to launch, or those with only initial works completed, I think they're going to be struggling to fight for funds from the government. And so we'll have a greater focus on trying to attract different forms of investment and financing to proceed with their projects. Okay, I've finished the presentation now, so please start submitting your questions, which I'll attempt to answer. But just a reminder, please join our WhatsApp channel. It's a curated news channel of key news developments sent once or twice a week. Scan the QR code to join it. It's very unobtrusive and very useful if you want to keep up to date in a quick way to understand what's happening in the market. Final question of the day. MEED obviously offers a number of different solutions, whether that's our MEED.com news features and analysis service, whether it's our projects database, MEED projects tracking service, our premium intelligence reports like our Giga Projects 2025 Q4 report, our events like our Giga Projects Summit, and or our marketing solutions, white papers, thought leadership, and bespoke events. So we've got a quick poll question. If you are interested in any of these services or products or solutions that MEED provides, please fill out now and we'll get in touch. Right. Thank you very much. Good to see a lot of interest there, more than 100 of you. Right. Now just before I start on the Q&A, just another quick reminder. If you are at all interested or want to be involved or are already involved in the Giga Projects program in Saudi Arabia, you should definitely consider attending our Giga Projects Summit event in June 2026 next year in Riyadh. It's going to be, I believe, hosted again by Roshan and the Russian front, and will feature most of the Giga Project clients either speaking or in attendance. Great chance to network and also to hear firsthand about their project plans, scopes, packages, and also to attend some summits and workshops and networking opportunities and networking events as well. So please check it out, scan the QR code, whether you want to attend as a sponsor or as a delegate. It's definitely the event of the year for anyone interested in the granular elements of these Giga Projects programs. And again, last final reminder, our Q4 2025 Saudi Giga Projects report, our most popular report, is on sale now. You get a special discount for attending today. Scan the QR code if you want to learn more. It's more than 800 pages, PowerPoint format, chock-a-block full of data, granular project packages, contact details, contractor information, and so on the Giga Projects program. Right, Q&A. Let's move swiftly on. I can see I've got already 56 questions or comments, and let's go. Try to answer them if I can. So we've got a question here, looking at the falling awards. Is this a sign of a slowdown or just a normal project cycle? Well, it is true that there are cycles in projects activity. It does go up and down. A lot of it is to do with the oil price. Obviously, a lot of projects are funded by the state. So when oil prices fall, so too does government spending. But I think with the Giga Projects program, there's a clear deceleration in project spending as a result of rising costs, government financing constraints, and also engineering scope and cost inflation challenges. So there's a combination of different reasons. Just reading through the questions and ones which I can try and answer. Right, can we focus on mid-sized projects? It's what else is happening outside of the Giga Projects program? Well, this particular webinar is focused on the Giga projects, but we do have other webinars and other reports and content around other projects in the Saudi Arabia projects market. But in terms of mid-size, I think it's important to bear in mind that the vast majority of project spending in Saudi Arabia is not in the Giga Projects program. So whether that's for Aramco, whether it's for private sector real estate investment, whether it's for ministries and municipalities, whether it's petrochemicals or industrial projects, there are hundreds and thousands of projects outside of the Giga Projects base. Can we share the presentation? Yes, the presentation will be shared with you as long as you registered for this event with your email. You will receive a copy. Is Q Express Rail project an independent project, or is it linking to the existing metro line? It will link to the existing metro line at King Abdullah Financial District. But the whole idea about these high-speed railway projects is that they have as few stations as possible, because in order for it to accelerate and decelerate, it needs to have a large distance between the different stations. What is the foreseen role of consultants, both management and engineering, going forward with the shift to real estate focus and PPPs? Well, we already know, and you'll probably have seen from the news, that there has been a large downsizing of engineering and management consultant presence, particularly in, say, NEOM, as, of course, the projects themselves slow down. And we've seen a lot of consultants move back to Dubai, for example. So there's going to be less dependence and reliance on those. But of course, we've still got a very large, long pipeline of projects in the kingdom. So there's going to still be plenty of work for those types of companies to come. What is the estimated total current projects in the market, given those which have been awarded and are ongoing? Well, in terms of, I'm thinking this is an important question in terms of cash flow. So while we're looking in this presentation at contract awards, I think it's important to bear in mind that a lot of the cash flow into the market is still to come if you're further down the supply chain. Currently we've got, well over $300 billion of active projects under construction in the kingdom. That's a combination of the projects awarded in 2022, 23 last year, and this year. And all of that, of course, flows into the market. Indeed, for many materials such as cement and other equipment and supplies and so on, we may not yet have reached the peak of the market. If you were to pick 3 of the Saudi Giga projects that would IPO first, which would they be and why? And how early would this be? Wow, that's quite a question. And I don't have a crystal ball, but I would say it's the projects or Giga projects which are earning revenue, because you need to have some sort of revenue and revenue projection in order to be able to IPO. So the ones which are earning revenues, well, the most obvious ones are Red Sea, Diriyah to a certain extent, and certainly Qiddiya once it opens. So one would logically look at those. Roshan as well, earning revenues through off-plan sales. So that's also another possibility. It's a great way to earn investment, of course, to re-inject into the project company. It allows them to stand on their 2 feet, and it allows them to be able to borrow without necessarily government support. And it's not just the Giga project clients. I would expect other companies in which PIF has developed, such as the contractors, I imagine, and other companies in supply chain, not necessarily owned by the state or through PIF, also to IPO as the market is, it's at its peak. What is the reason investments have plunged massively, not just in Giga projects, but overall across oil, gas, and petrochemicals? Well, we've definitely seen that cycle where Aramco is spending less before it increased more spending. So that's one of the reasons. But also just government finances. Oil price is $10, $20 lower than it was. So governments can't spend as much. There's an evaluation of the spending program by the state. So, when you combine all those factors, lower oil and gas spending, lower Giga project spending, lower government spending overall, that's really one of the major reasons for the decline. It's also fair to say that this spending decline is seen in the other GCC states as well. So UAE is well down on last year too. It's not unique to Saudi Arabia. What rail projects are being prioritized and what's the timeline for the key initiatives? Well, rail is a very important sector right now, not just in Saudi Arabia, but in the UAE certainly too, with metro and LRT systems there and high-speed railway. But the priorities are the Q Express, the delivery of Line 2, and then I believe the SAR projects around the land bridge. So we've seen Riyadh Link tendered. We may well see the land bridge tendered in a few months. We've got the doubling of the Northern Minerals Railway line expected to come out this week. We may well see Line 7 Metro as well in Riyadh. We also saw in September Mecca Metro be relaunched with a huge project with a call for contractors for a Job X meeting. What is the current status for the World Cup stadiums program? We've seen a few of them are awarded already. Of course, we've got the Dammam Stadium with Roshan and Ramco well under construction. Beautiful project and is expected to be ready in time for the 2027 Asian Cup. We've got the Roshan Stadium in the market. We've got Qiddiya Stadium as well. I believe that may already been awarded. I can't remember. We've got Jeddah Central has been awarded under construction. And we've also got the expansion of various existing stadiums as well. And we've got one of the stadiums on a PPP basis, which is the Prince Fahd Stadium too. So they're well underway. Of course, they must be ready in time for the World Cup in 2034. But it's also important to bear in mind, looking at, say, the Qatar experience, that not all of the stadiums which Saudi Arabia put into its bid book for FIFA will necessarily be built. Qatar's stadium program was reduced from 14 to about 10 to 12, I believe. So it's not unreasonable to think that the same might happen in Saudi Arabia. Definitely, for example, NEOM. Well, if the NEOM project the line itself isn't going to happen in the time frame over the next 5-10 years, then it's logical to assume that the stadium on it will also not be able to be built. There may be others where there's a bit riskier, for example, Qiddiya Coast Stadium, maybe the one in Abha. We'll wait and see. But I don't think all of them will be built. Okay, so I've got a point here. I believe the intention from the beginning was to build the infrastructure and the iconic assets and let the private sector continue the work. The issue is that this was never communicated clearly. So 2 points there. I'll talk about the communication one first of all. In my opinion, and in my opinion also as a communications specialist or expert, I believe one of the big problems with the Giga Projects program was the lack of clarity and the ongoing lack of clarity in the communication around them. I don't believe when they were launched, each project, some of the projects were launched without the master plan being completed, vague details of what they were, even where they were, and the master plans were not particularly clear. The sort of long-term objectives were not clear, and there was definite optimism or maybe exaggeration of the timeframes for them to be delivered. And I think NEOM especially suffered as a result of that. Now, whether or not it was the original intention is unclear. But in my mind, the lack of clarity and the ongoing lack of clarity about the Giga Projects program has meant that the narrative has been taken away, or the control of the narrative has been taken away from the PIF and the Giga Project companies and been left for others to fill the gap. And absolutely, I think communication has been a major problem. Now, in terms of what the original intention was, well, the original intention was definitely to always attract foreign investment or local investment into the projects. The problem is that this hasn't happened. Very little investment into the Giga Projects program, which has been really one of the causes for the challenges around them. It's meant there's more dependence on government spending, direct government spending, either from the PIF or the government itself. And there's been real struggle to attract foreign investment. A lot of that, again, is down to the communication. So foreign investors are often unaware or uncertain about what the projects are, what they're supposed to do, what the vision is for them. And that has, unfortunately, created a lot of confusion in the market and also resulted in challenges around attracting investment. And we're seeing now a focus on the real estate side. Real estate side is easier. If you're creating the infrastructure, it's easier to attract real estate investors to sell off-plan property. You give them the infrastructure and they can sell it. There is demand, of course. From January, foreigners will be able to own land in the kingdom and property in the kingdom, rather. So it's easier to sell. But I believe that the iconic assets were to go hand in hand with that. And at the moment, what we're seeing is a move away from the iconic assets and much more towards the sort of real estate side. Of course, not for every Giga projects. Diriyah has already launched and has even finished some of the iconic assets. So too has Qiddiya and others to a certain extent. But we are now seeing much more of a move towards the real estate side. Right, we are facing difficulty in getting feedback from many clients on our submitted bids not being replied to. Well, this is a big problem for everyone. A lot of people have submitted bids. A lot of people have responded to tenders. The issue simply is that the budgets have not been approved, so clients cannot proceed with awards. And until we get more clarity on the Giga Projects program, maybe next year, we'll have to wait and see. When do we think we'll see the RFP RFQ for Q Express and Riyadh Rail Link and the Land Bridge? Well, we expect, now that EOIs have been submitted for Q Express, I would expect the RFP to come out, or PQ process to start within a month or two. That's normal time frame. The Riyadh Rail Link, again, fairly soon, I imagine. The Land Bridge over the next few months. Difficult to say. I don't have visibility on exactly when these will come out, but we can be fairly confident something will happen over the next 6 months. I've got a lot of questions outside the scope of this webinar. For example, questions about Oman, Bahrain, manufacturing, and so on. I won't be able to answer those because, especially as I've got more than 100 questions, I need this webinar is focused on the Giga Projects program in Saudi Arabia, so I'm going to stick to answering those questions if I can. What are the Giga projects in the water sector market? Well, of course, a lot of these are dependent or relying on desalination, wastewater treatment, water treatment, and so forth. So, for example, Enewa, the water and power arm of NEOM, a lot of these projects are off-grid using renewable energy. So there's a lot of still renewable energy projects. PIF itself, in a separate track, is awarding large utility-scale solar PV projects. Saudi Arabia needs to build 2 gigawatts a year, 20 gigawatts a year of solar capacity or renewable energy capacity for the next foreseeable future. So there's definitely going to be a very large pipeline. And then, of course, again, outside of the scope of this webinar are the SWPC water projects, the WETCO water projects, which are all being developed on a PPP basis as well. So a very strong pipeline for power and water, very good visibility long-term about those. These are priority sectors not going to be affected by the slowdown in spending because, of course, not only are they national priorities, but they have to keep up with the growing demand. Can I get a link to the presentation? Yes, if you've registered, you will get a copy of this, as long as you gave the right email address. What is the status of Project Rise? Project Rise is this very tall 2-kilometer tower coming up the north of Riyadh, and this will be probably under the Tower District Real Estate Development Company, I believe, by PIF. I believe it's Foster and Partners have the design. Arup are involved there some way as well. If the project is going to proceed, and with something of the cost of 2 kilometers and the engineering challenge, who knows, then we may well see some clarity on that over the next 2 years. What about projects and islands that have been transferred from NEOM to Red Sea Global? Well, I talked about that. Sindala is being largely reworked. Red Sea Global, which has had great success in developing Shabara and other islands, is now onto Lahak Island. I'm sure is going to continue doing a great job in Sindala, and maybe Shusha and the other islands, 12 islands or so that previously formed part of NEOM. So I expect those will proceed as well. What is your view on NEOM Trojena ski resort? Is it going to continue? Very good question. Is there a source of water for the lake? Another very good question. So, of course, NEOM Trojena, the ski resort there, is aimed at serving the 2020 9 Asian Winter Games. There was some doubt or confusion about whether it will be held in 2029 or whether it will be transferred to another country. Personally, it's going to be really difficult, in my view, for Trojena to be completed by 2029. But let's see. But Trojena seems to be continuing at pace at the moment. In terms of the water, well, very good question. Water's going to have to be pumped from the coast all the way up the mountains to fill the lake there. That's going to take several years. So a very good question. In terms of the source, the sea, in terms of the time frame, a long time. For Sindala, what companies are going to be the contractors? Will they be the same as built the original Sindala? Don't know. But I imagine it will go out to a competitive tender. Another question about Trojena, the Winter Games, which I think I've answered. Do you believe, elaborate on whether PPPs and other financing schemes will affect the competitive landscape and margin profile of EPC construction companies operating in Saudi Arabia? Well, I'll leave it to your own experience to evaluate whether working for a private sector developer or working for a government or PIF entity is more advantageous, depending on who you work with. But I don't believe the profile of companies will change all that much, the contracting companies. One of the big problems with developing the projects in Saudi Arabia is the absence of big international contractors other than those from China and from Korea. Others have largely left the market, which has put a lot of focus on local contractors and put a lot of the capacity pressure on them, which has added to the challenge. Whether or not more private sector developers are become the clients that will attract other companies from around the world, I don't know. But certainly if there's going to be more export credit agency finance projects, then you would start to see other contractors come in, just as we saw with Bouygues, for example, on the Qiddiya project, which has got ECA support from the UK. Another question about Trojena. Do you think Qiddiya will continue after the theme parks open? Yes, I do. I think we've always, as you've seen, we've got the stadium, we've got the World Athletic Stadium. There's going to be a residential element to it. There's a lot more to come, I believe, at Qiddiya, and especially with the Q Express, another major investment. I do believe that Qiddiya will be a success and will continue to grow. Of course, we'll know for sure once the theme parks open and the tourism and numbers will get to be able to evaluate. We do know from the Dubai parks experience that theme parks are not a certain sure thing. You have to get the pricing right, you have to get the location right, you've got to get the intellectual property right. And it's not necessarily a surefire winner. However, Six Flags and some of the other brands they brought in, the Formula Racing track, there's a critical mass of projects there. If they can get the access right, the pricing right, then I'm pretty sure Qiddiya is going to be a major success. What is the outlook for 2026? Is it gloomy or bullish? Depends. I think it depends on the markets you're targeting. Basic infrastructure, the Riyadh Giga projects, stadiums, Expo, I think are much more likely to proceed and be the focus. I also think power and water projects too. But some of the more speculative Giga projects may be a challenge. The WhatsApp code does not seem to be valid. Okay, well, we'll take a look at that and we'll make sure that the code is correct when we send you the report. How big is the data center projects market? Well, data centers, along with battery energy storage solutions, is a very fast-growing segment of the market right now. With the rise of AI, the region wants to become a leader in AI. Cheap electricity, lots of space, makes them prime candidates for becoming leaders in data center construction and development and capacity, especially if you're able to attach renewable energy supply to these projects, which you can. So very, very strong growth in data centers market. If you're not involved in data centers right now or not involved in battery energy storage solutions, get in there because it's going to be a very fast growing sector. You can thank me afterwards. How good is the MEED platform in getting accurate project details in terms of contacts and locations? Well, most projects we physically visit in terms of construction projects. So we have GPS pins for them, so fairly accurate. In terms of the oil and gas and industrial projects, which we're not able to physically visit and which are maybe spread out, we're quite good in terms of where they're located and the general area. In terms of contact details, we aim to get contact details of all the key major decision makers on projects, the client side, consultant or contractor side. But of course, we are limited by the willingness of those stakeholders to provide us that information to put onto the system. Do you expect foreign money to come into real estate projects following the change of regulations and the impact of land prices following the white land tax? Very good question, and one which we'll have to wait and see, I think. I personally believe there is going to be a huge untapped demand for real estate in Saudi Arabia. We saw this happen in 2001 and 2 in Dubai. It led to a 5-year, 8-year explosion in real estate investment, and to some extent has never ended in the UAE. And with Saudi Arabia being much larger, having a much larger population, if they can the government can tie it with foreign residents, with residency, long-term residency and visa, I expect there to be a huge demand, especially from places like South Asia, for investment in real estate in the kingdom. And of course, even more so if this is allowed also in Mecca and Medina. So I'm very positive about that. I expect we'll see a surge in new real estate projects in the kingdom as a result. And also where we can see that from also the cityscape last week, where we saw a number of large new real estate projects announced. White land tax, the idea behind that is to encourage investment of unused land. Of course, that is on the assumption that the owners of that unused land actually have the finance to be able to develop the projects on them. And that remains to be seen. Another question about data centers, questions about mortgages. I'm just trying to look at some of the questions. Will the Mukaab be ready for 2030 Expo? So this is the 400 by 400 meter by 400 meter cube like structure. The Mukaab is centerpiece of New Murabba. Will it be basically ready and open by the end of 2030? Honestly, realistically, very, very challenging. I mean, not only is it an extremely complex engineering and construction exercise, very technologically heavy, needs a huge amount of finance as well. I don't think that's possible. I think we have to be realistic about some of these giga projects. I think there's been a lack of realism or pragmatism about a lot of them since they were launched. And I think it's going to be difficult. Never say never, of course. And I'd like to be proved wrong. It's a magnificent project, but I think it's not realistic for it to be ready in time. Do we have any details on the Riyadh Metro project, Line 7 and 8? Well, Line 7 has been out in the market for tender for quite a while. Line 8 is still in that concept or design stage. Line 7, I think the doubt about Line 7 now is not just in the financing of it, but also in the fact that Q Express has come along and covers a lot of the same ground that Line 7 might. I don't doubt that there will be further extensions or new lines in Riyadh Metro, but I'm not sure how much of a decision has yet been made on Line 7 and whether it's going to be delayed a little for Q Express. The move to real estate plays, is this quite a normal approach to be taking, and does this signal some kind of wider urgency around the need for funding? Well, the answer is both. It makes a lot of sense to try and develop real estate assets around anchor projects. It brings financing in, it brings funding in, it helps accelerate construction and gives the impression of greater impetus for projects. and of course, is a good commercial exercise. But of course, I think it also does signal some wider urgency around the funding, yes, because I don't believe that these were the original immediate priority. And I think things are being dynamic. I think as some of these Giga projects are being told that financing is tight, find other ways of financing your project. I think real estate is an obvious solution. PPPs is another obvious one. And contractor finance is another obvious one as well. We've seen pushed for all three of those over the last 12, 18 months. I think also securing export credits and other financing through corporate bonds or greater borrowing is also another sign of that. But I think if we look at what happened in Dubai and a much more of a transition of these projects into real estate plays over time, then I do see that kind of now being replicated in Saudi Arabia. Whether that not, and by the way, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Oh, another question about Murabba. Do you think the Mukaab raft will ever be officially awarded or a major design is underway? Frankly speaking, if the Mukaab is to be built, then of course the raft raft works will need to be awarded. So yeah, I do believe it will be awarded. The question is when and in what scope. And for that, you'd have to ask Murabba. Again, some of the questions are not necessarily pertinent to the topic in hand, so I won't be able to answer all of them. I think I should also mention that we're running out of time, so I will try and answer those which I can. Should also point out that I have answered some of these questions already, so I don't necessarily need to answer them again. Can we have a session on data center projects? Yes, we have I believe in February will be our webinar and report on data centers. Our next webinar will be around the PPP projects market in the region. But we'll do a MENA data centers one, I believe, in February. Actually, sorry, no, our next webinar is going to be on hydrogen projects, and then the one after that will be in January on data centers, sorry, on PPPs, and then in February on data centers. Trajena, I've answered. Who's the MEP design consultant on the Rise Tower? I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head right now. Any upcoming projects in the eastern region, Koba or Jubail? Yes, I think in terms of the Giga projects, Eastern Province has been somewhat neglected, but that is changing. We've got Destinations Development Company in Sheba. We've got the Gulf Coast Real Estate Development Company in Khafji in the divided zone. We've got Alucare Area Development Company also out there, Salwan Development Company as well. So these are all looking at developing real estate and mixed use and tourism projects along the Gulf Coast. So definitely we're seeing that shift towards that side. What reasons could there be for the decrease in PPP projects between 2023 and 24? I just think that's a natural fluctuation. You can have a couple of big projects that might get awarded in December of one year and instead of the January of the next. But the trend is a sharp acceleration, both in terms of the value and number of PPP projects in the kingdom. And if you look at NCP, they've got more than 250 PPP projects in the pipeline. So that's not going to change. PPP is the future. Do you see a cash flow problem in Saudi Arabia? I see a cash flow problem. Always has been a cash flow problem in the projects market in general in the region over the last 20, 30 years. I don't see that changing. If you are in projects market in the region, you are going to experience or see a cash flow problem at one point or another. Will it be as severe as the 2017 to 2020 period? No. But of course, cash flow is always a challenge. What is the current activity on King Salman Airport project? Well, there have been tenders and EOIs out for different works, the runway, the iconic terminal, Terminal 6, and utilities work. I do believe there might be some rescoping of the project, maybe some rescoping over time, but work is underway, and this is, I believe, is one of the projects that will proceed in time for the World Cup in 2030, and definitely for the World Cup in 2034, and certainly for the Expo. Will all of it be ready by then? No. But certainly if you take Riyadh Air and some of the other airlines that are coming up, then there will need to be greater enhancement of capacity at the airport. Can we have a webinar about the power market? Yes, we've done one this year already. You can find that on YouTube. And we'll do another one later next year as well on the power market in the MENA region. As Expo 2030 is expected to be finished in 2030, will there be any update on facilities management tenders? There will be very significant FM and operations contracts, of course, for the Expo. I don't know if we'll see those coming out in the next 2 years. I think closer towards 28, 29, we'll see those come out to market. Which 3 Giga projects should we focus on? Well, good question. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not paid nearly enough to answer those questions in detail. But I would say the Riyadh ones and the ones I've discussed: Diriyah, Qiddiya, King Salman International Airport, Roshan, for the time being. What details does your report include? Contractors, subcontractors, dates, consultants, contacts? Yes, all of those. And I think I've answered most of the questions. When is the Red Sea project complete? Will it be disbanded when all the projects are finished? No. And well, first question is that it's ongoing. There is a phase 1, which is almost complete. Phase 2 is even bigger and better. And work will start on that. Of course, Red Sea Global is moving on to Sindala and other islands around Neom, has now Laheg Island. And if you look at the number of islands in the Red Sea coast, that is only just the beginning. Lots of other projects for it to potentially develop. So no, it's not going to be disbanded. It's going to continue. If you haven't checked out, by the way, the hotels on the Red Sea Global project, you definitely should. Fantastic projects are now open for tourism, tourists to go and stay there. Fantastic projects. And in fact, one of the hotels in Shabara recently won the MEED MENA Project of the Year 2025 at our MENA Projects Awards last week. Question here, a kind of leading question. Will Oxygen be transferred to Saudi Aramco? That's a rumor that's been circulating in the projects market for quite a long time. And it's possible that, yes, certain elements of Oxygen could be transferred to Aramco, but don't quote me on that. Just a rumor. What about NMDC Stadium, New Murabba Stadium? Well, earlier this year, NMDC did say they'd received ECI, early contractor involvement bids for the stadium. Whether it proceeds or not, I think is one for the government to decide whether it wants to have it at that stadium as part of the World Cup or not. I don't know if that's going to be within NMDC's hands or not. But I think, yes, I think it will. Other questions about Trojana, Q Express, the Rig Tourism Project, in bold letters, so I guess it's quite an urgent question. The rig, I think there was tenders for the terminals, onshore terminals, and for certain work offshore. The reason there's no update is because there is no update on that project. At the moment, it's a bit in flux, in my opinion, but I will try and come back to you to get some information on that. What is the update on the Aramco Stadium in Eastern Province? The Russian Aramco Stadium, we went to visit it we were invited by Aramco to see it under construction. It's under construction currently in Akhoba. Fantastic project, well on its way to being completed in time for the 2027 Asian Football Championship. So no doubts about that one. Any new hydrogen projects? No, the hydrogen market has slowed down a lot. A lot of the hype has slowed down. Obviously, we know that the green hydrogen project in NEOM has suffered from a large increase in capex, and there's still the ongoing challenge around being able to produce green hydrogen cost effectively for off-takers. Right, I think I've run out of time. I've gone way over. I'm sorry if I haven't answered all your questions. I can see 350 of you still online, staying till the end. Thank you very, very much about that for that, and much appreciated. I hope you found this presentation webinar valuable and insightful. Thank you for your questions. You will receive a copy of this report. It will go on to YouTube, and please go through it. Get onto that WhatsApp channel. Check out our summit. Check out our reports, and I hope to see you all again next month for our next webinar. Thank you very much, and see you all soon. Thank you.